One thing, of course, you can see here is you've got to scroll over to see the whole table. It's kind of big. But it is there. It's static. I almost never create these static tables, but I just wanted to show an example of another equivalent render and output function. So, table. The next step is, frankly, I think one of the more exciting ones. So right now our app is static. We can't interact. We can use our inputs to interact with our graphs, nothing on our table, but we can't actually do anything with this graph. We don't hover over this and we can't see exactly the percent of industry in 2009. Not super helpful, in my opinion, especially when you're trying to convey information to users. So we're going to go into the code here is all in Tunisia app interactive _4, and we're going to do this list of things. We're going to take our static outputs and make them interactive. We can do this using Plotly for graphs and DT for data tables. One thing you'll see me do, and this is just standard practice, is we're not going to load the Plotly or DT packages directly in the app, but we're going to use explicit calls like Plotly : render Plotly, DT : data table. If you've not seen this before, you know it's just package function to let the app know exactly where it came from. And blessedly, the reason we can do all of this is because of a really cool package called HTML widgets. HTML widgets was originally authored by Ramnath Vaidyanathan and has since been added on to over the years. And it allows you to embed different kinds of interactive things into both Shiny dashboards, our Markdown documents, Flex dashboards, etc. So HTML widgets is why we can put maps and Plotly plots and data tables into Shiny. So we owe a lot to that, and like most RStudio related products, it has a great website where you can go in and see, like we're going to use Plotly. So here's an example. If you've never used it before, you can just take ggplot code and convert it into interactive graphs where you can hover and see values. You can click to turn things on and off. You can zoom. Oh, let's double click on this to zoom back out. We're also going to use data tables. So data tables are a JavaScript thing, a JavaScript widget that allows you to create a table that instead of that static table, we can select values, we can sort, we can search. All sorts of cool things. I really like data tables, and they are, for me, the default when I build a table in Shiny App. So HTML widgets are really cool, and if you want to see the showcase or the gallery of apps using them, there's a bunch of other things. Another really common, we're not going to do it because I didn't have any location data for this, but another really common one is to use Leaflet to make interactive maps. I really like Leaflet. It's a really quick way to make a map. It's the only way I really know to. I'm not really a spatial statistician. So let's take our outputs. Let's make them interactive. If you don't have them, of course, you'll need to install Plotly and DT. So you'll want to do it with installed out packages, and you can do, shoot, it's actually, you have to do it in a vector, Plotly, DT, or you can install them separately. Cool. We're going to change the outputs, so we know we're going to work in the server. So normally, let's just do this way first. Let's take this graph and turn it into a Plotly graph. So this was our regular line graph that we built. We put in our app. We know what that looks like. If we were going to make a Plotly graph, we would assign this to an object, GG Plotly function. And now if I run this chunk, I have the same graph, but interactive. Can kind of take a second to load. So now I can hover here and see that in 2010, The growth rate was 3.51. In 2015, 1.17. I made the graph interactive. Like I said, you can zoom, all sorts of things. So if you were doing it in our Markdown document, something else, that's the way you would do this. In a Shiny app, it's a little bit simpler. All we have to do is change our render function and then our output functions. So instead of render plot, we're going to use, like I said, the direct call to Plotly. We're going to use render Plotly in its place. And I'll go down to render plot again. We'll change it in both places. The key thing to remember, I've changed the server. Now I have to go back to the UI and change the output functions here. But similarly, Plotly, render, or Plotly, output. Really straightforward. Change this, change that. I'll run the app. And now I have my Plotly plots. So the same interactive one you've already seen for the growth rate. And now we've gotten to the point that we have managed to recreate that graph we had on the Statista website. So I can see that in 2008, the GDP share of industry was 31.45, services 53.6%, and agriculture 7.85. My plots are interactive. I usually, by default, use Plotly plots. I kind of assume that when I'm presenting information to a stakeholder, they're going to want to interact with that information. So I just throw it out there automatically. Static plots are absolutely fine if that's what you need. I usually default to the interactive ones. Luckily, creating the data table is just as straightforward. We go down to render table in the server, and we're going to switch over from using render table to DT render data table. We go back to the UI, table output to DT data table output. And it is, this is one thing Joe Chang, the CTO of our studio who wrote Shiny, has said a bunch of times. If he could go back in time, he wouldn't make everything in Shiny camel case, but he did. And so you can see everything kind of follows that, even though the tiny way is to use snake case. So now if I run the app again, and I go to economic indicators, I have this table, which allows me, I can select rows if I want, like if I just want to highlight all the way across, just 2012. I have 11 years, so it might be nice to show 25 entries so I can see all of them at once. I can sort if for some reason that was of interest. So that's a pretty basic data table. However,